Hey everybody and welcome to Lex's World, and today we're going to be doing an LED grow light review as well as somewhat of a brand review of this right here. This is the Meizhi R1200W, also known as their 1200. And man, does this thing ever look familiar? If you think that it does look familiar, that's because it looks an awful lot like some of the Mars Hydros that I've had on the show, as well as certain models of the Viper Spectralights. And that's what Meizhi is they are another brand that's an Asian brand trying to compete for that same market of beginner casual growers who are trying to get an LED fixture on a budget. So let's take a closer look at this thing. So here it is, and in power consumption as well as in price, this unit, which is the biggest by Meizhi, is closest to Viper Spectra's extremely similar 1200. And in spectrum quality, it's closest to a similar size Mars Hydro, like the 960 watt, for example. Meizhi has been around a while, guys. It's been around since about 2012, so they're slightly younger than Viper Spectra by about a year, and they're a few years younger than the Mars Hydro brand. Overall, the Meizhi 1200 here is another budget light out of China with good feedback from many casual growers about its yield performance, if not always its long-term reliability, which makes it sort of a solid starter light, if perhaps not a light that you might want to rely on for 5 years or more. Now it weighs less than 18 pounds, which is the lightest fixture I've seen of similar wattage that wasn't a quantum board LED. The low weight on one hand is a positive because you can hang it from pretty much anything easily, but it's a negative since, as I've mentioned before, low weight doesn't say much for materials quality. Now let's see it hanging and explore a few more of the features. Here we are, guys, in hanging mode, and as you can see, this light does have the separate veg and flowering switches, which is handy for saving power in early vegetative phase. And there's also daisy chain capability on the other side of the light. This is an update over older versions of this model. And of course, we also have 4 large cooling fans on top, as well as heat sinks in there for cooling. If you look at the front side of the light where the actual diodes are, it offers a good variety of bands, which we'll talk about more in detail in a sec. But there's no chip on board luxuries here, as you guys can see. It's got a price point though of $380 US, which competes almost down to the dollar with the super affordable benchmarks of other big lights for bigger spaces by budget brands. Now, this is Meizhi's biggest model, as I've said. It's basically like 4 of their 300 watt models put together. And the actual diodes on the light, all 240 diodes and all 7 bands, are made by Epistar, which is a large brand out of Taiwan. It's quite established and for sure a major diode maker, though the diode quality isn't what you'd get in a higher priced light, which might carry European Osram diodes or US-based Cree diodes. As usual with these type of lights, what it says in the manual for power draw, HID equivalence, and par value aren't quite right. So for example, the manual in the box for this claims a power draw of 458 watts, plus or minus 5%. And I did get 480 watts, but depending on the versions of this light that you measure out there, it could be up to 568 watts. And by the way, yes, there are multiple versions of this light out there. The older version has 8 infrared diodes, unlike mine, which clearly from this pic I'm showing you guys now only has 4. The older version also has no daisy chain capability, and the colors of the bands are slightly different. Now, the 1200 is a reference to the wattage of the diodes, and the company claims that the light should also replace a 1200 watt HID, but the max coverage area is 5 by 4 feet. This tent that we're in right now is a 4x4, and the core coverage for the light is probably 4.5 feet by 3.5 feet, so it's actually trying to compete with roughly an 8 to 950 watt HID bulb. As for par, their graphic off of Amazon says the par value at 18 inches away from the canopy is 1209, and the manual in the box claims 1265. This could be another one of those new version, old version discrepancies, but I've seen more reliable numbers for this model between the low 800s and 1086 at 18 inches below the footprint of the light, which is still very respectable, but either way, 18 to 22 inches is the height from the canopy that I would hang this light at, certainly during flowering phase. When you look at spectrum quality and bands in detail, there's a lot to say. Many websites mislabel this light as a 12-band light, and those who don't know how many bands it has simply call it full spectrum without elaborating, but I've 100% confirmed that there's 6 bands plus infrared on this for a total of 7 bands, specifically these 7 bands as quoted to me by the company. So not 12, making it more like most Mars hydros than Viper spectra in that respect. But on the plus side, I thought that the spread of bands that they do have is a very good spread. You do not need to pad up this LED light with any flowering stage side boosters. There is sufficient red and white light here on flowering mode, which is actually great when compared to a Viper spectra, which piles in a very rich 12-band spectrum into its lights, but might need a little bit of backup to really excel on the flowering front. The warranty on Meizhi is a complex 3-year warranty. Within 1 year, the parts replacement and shipping are free. From 1 to 2 years, you'll be responsible for shipping charges, and parts replacement is free. And from 2 to 3 years, you'll be responsible for shipping charges as well as a handling fee. To give you guys some actual context, this is really close to Mars Hydro's warranties, but below Viper Spectra's warranties. To me, it's the slight differences in warranty and age of the company which have historically kept Meizhi out of the recommended budget section of my Grow Gear shop, but still, this is not a bad light at all and worth consideration by a beginner looking to dip their toes into growing and cover a big area while keeping initial costs down. I will link to both my Grow Gear shop and the Meizhi 1200 on Amazon in the video description for you guys. Meanwhile, if you want to enter to win this light, it's the same deal as usual. Just like and leave a comment on this video, whichever platform you're watching it on, by July 14th, 2019, and you're entered. Your comment is your entry, and if you make a ton of entries, you'll probably get marked as spam, and I won't save you from the spam bin, so don't do that. Winner will be added to the video description and have their winning comment replied to on July the 15th. Also, I'm going to do a giveaway on my Instagram starting this week of some Meizhi smell-proof bags. Apparently they make these non-disposable bags that do this. So they sent these to me for some reason, but I don't really need them, so I'm going to pass it on to you guys in the Instagram, so feel free to check that out in the description as well. Otherwise, if this was useful, just subscribe, and we'll see you back here next time.